Hello and welcome to Whiteboard Disasters with Disastrous History, where we use my handy dandy whiteboard here to explain how disasters happen. And today, we're not going to talk about a single disaster, but we're going to talk about one that frequently comes up all over the world, really, called a gas explosion. So, in order to explain a gas explosion, we are going to have our handy dandy house. You can see right here. I'm going to label it house, right? Okay, so if you live in a home or an apartment or whatever, there are several appliances in your home that will use natural gas in this case, because we're going to use natural gas as our example. So, for example, your furnace often will use natural gas. Your water heater will use natural gas. Your stove may use natural gas. Occasionally, you'll have a dryer that uses natural gas, although I believe those are more rare at this point. So, what that means is that you have to have some sort of supply of natural gas into your home. In this case, usually that shows up on the outside of your house as a giant meter. It's called a gas meter. And off that gas meter is a line. There's one line that goes into your house. This is going to be really giant. It's going to go into your house. And then on the other side is another line that goes down to a circular device here called a regulator. Now, that regulator is on the supply side of your house. So your gas in your house is flowing this direction. It goes into this regulator, which steps it down from usually somewhere around 60 psi here. It steps it down inside this regulator, like a transformer if you know electricity, to about 1/4 psi. Or if you are more familiar with gas in houses, it's 7 to 8 inches water column. So what that means is that, just to give you a really quick background, we have a pipe like this. It has some water in it, like that. If you were to apply pressure to the bottom of this, it would take 1/4 psi pressure to raise this line of water up 7 to 8 inches. That is what water column means. But for use here, we are going to use PSI because I think it's easier to understand. So, you have your regulator come down. It steps down to 1/4 psi. It goes through your gas meter. This tells you how much gas you used in your house. This is what they use to make your bill. And then it runs into your house, and it goes in different directions. So, we'll say it goes over here to your water heater, and it goes here to your furnace. These are obviously not to scale. This will be your furnace. And that's it. That says furnace. It's really terribly written. Anyway, so you have your natural gas flowing at about 1/4 psi or give or take. So let's say you have, say, a leak somewhere in your house, right? Right here, and natural gas starts leaking. The pipe breaks off or it has a hole in it or something. Gas starts to leak out, right? And it starts to fill your home. Now, what you need to understand about natural gas is that there is something called a lower explosive limit and an upper explosive limit. So if you think about this along a line, right? So you're in a volume, you have a volume, a box, a 3-foot by 3-foot box. In that box, you currently have no natural gas, zero methane. Natural gas is mostly methane. So you have 0% methane. In order to cause an explosion inside this confined box, you have to at least meet the lower explosive limit of methane, which is an exact number is like 4.5%, but I like to use 5% to round. So you need to have at least 5% of this box consisting of methane. That is your lower explosive limit. Your LEL is at 5%. It's different for propane, but that is your lower explosive limit. If you have less than 5% inside this box here, you might have a brief flash of fire, but unlikely you will have nothing if you stick a match in here. So if you have less than 5% methane in air, you may have a flash of fire, but you will likely have nothing. If you have 6% in here and you stick a match in here and light it, it will cause a lower end explosion. On the opposite end of your line here, so here you have 0%. On your opposite end of your line, you have the UEL, upper explosive limit. The upper explosive limit for methane is 15%, right? My percent signs might be backwards. Anyway, you have 15%. So if you have anywhere in this range from 5 to 15% inside this room, it will cause an explosion if you have an ignition and it is confined. So it's a big box of a 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot box. If you go above this 15%, say you have 18% methane by air in here, in stick and match in here, nothing will happen. You see, because you are higher than the UEL, there is not enough oxygen inside this room to cause combustion to be sustained. So it will do nothing. And if you went in there yourself, you would likely pass out because there's not enough oxygen and too much methane. So it is too rich of fuel to actually be able to sustain combustion. Here, it is too lean of fuel to contain combustion. So if it's less than 5%, it's too lean inside this box. So what does that look like inside a home? So you have your leak here, and you hit, say, 6% inside your house. And methane, natural gas, is lighter than air, so it tends to pool up at the ceiling. So let's say you hit 7%, 6%, 7% inside your house. And then your water heater realizes that it needs to heat up water, so it kicks on, and then you have an explosion. What does that look like in your home? So let's erase this really quick. You have an ignition of 6%, so this is our 6% explosion. You have an explosion inside your home of about 6%. What will happen is your ignition happens, the flame front will spread out in all directions. This is your flame front. It will spread out in all directions up into your roof, and it will collide with the walls here, right? Like this. Your flame front will go through your fuel. It will collide with the walls. It reaches those walls, and it cannot go any further. So it will bounce back and go back this direction. And it can't reach any further, and it'll bounce back. And eventually, it will continue to do that until it builds up so much pressure that something in these walls will fail. Usually, it's up here, because this is where your cloud of natural gas is going to be. So it's usually going to be this corner, and it'll lift up your roof. This doesn't take like a long time. It happens in milliseconds. So what will happen is this flame front will travel through. You will have an overpressure from containment, and it will cause your house... We're going to erase our house like this. It will cause your house to explode like this, with a lower explosive limit explosion from natural gas. It will cause your house to kind of, the tops of your roof, or the tops of your walls will fall this direction. Your roof will go up like this, and up like this, and it will fall over like this. And you will frequently find houses that have the walls that have looked like they've just been pushed over like this and pushed over like this. And oftentimes the roof will go straight up in the air and then fall straight back down right where it was at. That is your lower explosive limit. The other thing that you can tell if you've had a lower explosive limit explosion, one on the 6 to 8% range, is there will be very little fire damage left over. That's because as this flame front pushes through, right, like this, in all directions, it will consume all of the natural gas because there's not very much of it, right? And it doesn't last long enough, the flame front does not last long enough to ignite too many combustibles. Now, where our water heater was, you might have some burning there because the natural gas is still coming out of the pipeline, and depending on how many fuels are available in that space after the explosion has occurred, it may continue to burn there, but most often after lower explosive limit explosions, you will have not very much fire damage left over. But what happens if you go the other direction? What if we have an upper explosive limit explosion? So if we do the same thing, and we have, say, 16%, or not 16, I'm sorry, 14% in air, fuel-air ratio. So let's say we have 14%. You're significantly more natural gas in the house. You are very close to the upper range. You have your water heater kicks on over here. It flashes. You have your flame front go through, same as before. It will continue to travel through until it overpressures, and the same general type damage will occur. Is you will have your damage be more at the top. It'll push the walls out like that. Your roof will get lifted up like this. Your walls will get pushed out like this. They'll fall this direction, go straight up, and then straight back down, fall out like this. However, in the aftermath of this, you will have significantly more fire damage to the actual structures and portions of that house. That's because you have a much higher percentage of fuel, but it cannot use all of that fuel as it travels through the house, right? So there's only so much fuel that a fire can burn as it passes through because it's an inefficient process, right? So you have to have a certain percentage ratio of oxygen to fuel in order for it to burn efficiently. And this is not the efficient ratio. This will leave a ton of unburned methane in the area. So oftentimes after the flame front travels through, it will continue to burn excess fuel because of heat that will ignite the leftover fuels, which will then ignite whatever's left down here because it's burning for so much longer. So you'll have significantly more charred stud members on the outside, like the walls will actually catch on fire, the roof may catch on fire, the debris inside the actual home itself may catch on fire. You'll have a much more robust post-blast fire. But the real question that everyone is asking, I know, is how do we get gas explosions that send your house 5, 6, 7 blocks away into a million pieces? Well, that is what we call a stoichiometric explosion. So, we have our house here again. Right? That's a lopsided roof, but that's okay. And we have our gas leak, and it starts to fill up the house. Now, all gases have an essentially perfect ratio, perfect fuel to air ratio, where it will burn completely efficiently and cause the most pressure and expensive energy. For methane, that's about 9.5%, which isn't quite in the middle of, it's not the 10% where you would expect, it's about 9.5%. So what happens here is you have your natural gas at about 9.5% in the house. You have your ignition source of your water heater kicking on to heat up water, and it travels through. And it travels through so efficiently and creates so much energy that when it hits these walls, it splinters it into a million pieces. Quite literally a million pieces. The actual house explosions that you see where there is essentially nothing left, it literally just explodes it into a million pieces all around. This is called a stoichiometric explosion. Stoichiometric explosion. It is a perfectly efficient explosion in a fuel-to-air ratio. Stoichiometric is what you want to go for inside your vehicle. That's the gas-to-air ratio inside your actual vehicle itself. You want perfect combustion inside your vehicle. If you are trying to blow up your home, you also want stoichiometric. However, it is incredibly rare for a stoichiometric explosion to be achieved because generally you have to fall in a range of about 8.5 to 10.5 to get that big explosion. If you're anywhere outside these bounds, you're not going to have that stoichiometric explosion. Now, one of the things with stoichiometric is you still have a similar debris and damage assessment afterwards. So if you're on that upper end of stoichiometric, you will have some post-blast fire. If you're on that lower end of stoichiometric, you will have minimal post-blast fire. If you're perfectly stoichiometric, you will not have any fire whatsoever because the explosion pushes so much pressure that even if you have a gas leak and it's ignited by, say, your water heater, it will push the oxygen away and put that fire out. That is a thing that happens every once in a while in house explosions, is there's no fire afterwards, and people say, oh, well, this was clearly some kind of bomb. And it wasn't. It's because as this pressure waves emits from this house, it pushes oxygen away as well, which extinguishes the fire. In addition, one of the ways that you can tell that it's a a gas explosion or even a dust explosion versus an actual bomb is a bomb will have a crater. A gas explosion will not have a crater. Some people confuse gas explosions to having craters because there are basements in the home, but they will not have a crater. Bombs will always dig somewhat down into the ground and cause like a small crater. Gas explosions and dust explosions as well will not have a crater. So that is basically a natural gas explosion. You have your LEL, your UEL, and then wherever you fall in that range is where your explosion will stay.